our agenda is the consent agenda, approval of minutes from the regular meeting of August 22nd, 2019, approval of minutes from the executive session from August 22nd, 2019, the enrollment report from September 1st, 2019, the school police report from August 1st, 2019, school bus inspection reports as of September 1st, 2019, and the truancy residency report as of September 1st, 2019. I would like to point out that the superintendent had contacted me about the school bus inspection reports. His office gets them, so I've asked them that they now include them in our consent agenda so that the members of the school committee can get a good idea of the bus inspections from Durham. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Salvatore. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Next is the report out of the executive session on September 12, 2019. There were no votes taken during the executive session. I need a motion to seal the minutes from executive session.
Motion to seal.
Motion to seal by Mr. Fiorello.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salvatore and Mr. Hess. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Next is the superintendent's report, Our Schools Focus on the 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a long night, so I will make this brief. I think I'd mentioned that, the focus of our attention in our administrative retreat with our principals and assistant principals this summer was on this book called The Focus. The author of the book is Mike Schmoker. We believe it's an outstanding resource for not only instructional leaders, but also for teachers. And we have purchased this book for all of our administrators. We've also purchased the book for our coaches who are instructional coaches who are working with teachers. And we are doing a reading together. And it really is an outstanding book and focuses on what's really important. So I'll be spending a little bit more time as we go through the school year, but we're really excited about this book, and I believe it will help us to continue the good work that is happening in the district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Next is, excuse me 1 second. Okay, next is the report of standing committees, payment of bills. Mr. Hess.
Okay, fiscal did meet upstairs this evening. You'll pardon my voice. I'm getting over the last cold I'll have in the state of Rhode Island. So we had payment of bills for 2 fiscal years, fiscal year 18-19 in the amount of $32,584.59. And for the 19-20, $1,160,762.33 for a total of $1,193,346.92. That passed upstairs on a 3-0 vote, and I would move passage here as well.
Mr. Hess moves passage, payment of the bills. Do I have a second?
Second.
Not it all at once. Mrs. Friedman, Mrs. Waters. Any discussion? All in favor? Ayes have it. Payment of the bills of $1,193,346.92. So, thank you. Next is Fiscal Management Subcommittee update. Mr. Hess.
Okay, so in addition to paying the bills, we did get our business office monthly report from Mr. Prignano. Healthcare is trending a little more expensive at this point. It's a little bit of a math exercise, but it's something we need to keep an eye on. Healthcare is always that sort of Damocles each year, so we'll keep an eye on that. We did award the food service bid going forward to Sodexo. However, there is some contract language that they would like to adjust if possible, so we're waiting to hear back from them on that before we sign that on the dotted line. In addition, we did hear that we had some issues with trash pickup at some of the schools at the very beginning of the year, just owing to the excess amount of trash that's generated as we open school. But we were able to address that issue with the town. The town is the one that contracts with our our trash hauler, and we were able to get that rectified, so we do appreciate that assistance from Bob Anderson at the town. In addition, we voted on 2 items. One was the awarding of the pool contract. That passed upstairs on a 3-0 vote, and I believe that is held up later. And we discussed some adjustments to the fiscal year 20 school budget, making some amendments to reflect the final hiring and the job pool changes.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Any questions for Mr. Hess? Hearing none, next is policy and procedures.
Yes, policy and procedures did meet this past week. We addressed the field trip issue. We will be voting on 2 policies later on in the agenda. I'll just state for now that instead of overhauling the policies, I just did enough amending to them to bring them in line with state law. And that did pass on, both of those policies passed on a 3-0 vote with the intention of completely rewriting the field trip policies over the span of the next few months once we get some more guidance from RIDE, as well as maybe the outcome of some, any kind of legal actions anywhere in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Any questions?
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention.
Go ahead.
We had a brief discussion about the fundraising policy, J15. There was no action taken on that, and an actual finished draft was not presented at the meeting. That'll be in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Next is Achievement and Communications Subcommittee. Mrs. Friedman?
So we last met on August 27th, and the focus of that meeting was on the coaching model for teachers and professional development. And Mr. Devana and his team walked us through where they've been going from building up professional development expertise within the district so that we can become self-sustaining and, of course, as always, being data-driven in choosing which schools would benefit most from having teacher coaches. So we do have coaches currently at BF Norton in McCourt and Garvin. And we will continue to follow that model. Our next achievement meeting is on September 24th, and McCourt Middle School, the team will be coming in to give an update on their state report card and their plan for achievement for the 2019-2020 school year. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Mrs. Friedman? Okay, hearing none, next is comments from the public. Anyone that would like to address the school committee, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay, hearing none, thank you. Next is public hearings, reading of amended policies. Number 1 is I-6, school-sponsored overnight field trips. And the next one is I-10, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips. We'd like to read those into the record, Mr. Fiorello. And so we'll read them into the record. Anyone have any public comments in regards to those 2 policies? Hearing none, okay. Next is new business. We discussed the $83 million construction bond, so we'll get down to number B. Discussion and/or vote to approve the award of the pool contract bid. Mr. Hess, you had that upstairs?
Yes, so we discussed this upstairs in fiscal. We have need to go out and find someone else to run the pool for various reasons. And we did have 2 bids come in. There was a rather significant monetary difference between the rental fee between the 2 different options. And after some discussion upstairs on a 3-0 vote, we did accept the bid from Anglerfish Aquatics, which is run by Cumberland resident Jeff Mixis. And I would leave it up to the committee to decide how to go from here.
Anyone have any questions in regards to the pool? Mr. Fiorello?
I'm slightly confused because we're voting to approve the pool contract bid, but we don't actually have a contract. So we're really just approving the process of creating a contract with Angler. Is
Correct.
that what we're doing? And then at another meeting, we'll approve that actual
But
contract?
once our attorney, Mr. Adams, draws up the contract for both people to sign with the terms that were done on the bid documents, then it'll come back to us for a formal signature, but we're awarding the bid to Anglerfish Aquatics
Okay,
tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the bid.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve the bid.
I
I
would
just
like,
need a second for discussion.
second for discussion.
Right, second by Mrs. Friedman for discussion. Go ahead.
So I would just like a little more clarity on the difference in the monthly rental fee, and to ensure that the monthly rental fee from Angler includes the other items that were identified on the Bluefish contract. And are we certain that we're comparing apples to apples here?
Mr. Prignano, could you come up to the podium? But the difference in the base rent from Anglerfish was $4,100 per month, and the base rent was $3,166.66 from the other bidder. Now, I know the bid documents that we've had in the past includes paying for water, things like that, so I'll let the business manager address that. That was in the bid documents. Go ahead.
Yeah, the difference in the biggest difference. Well, there's 5 of us in the room now.
There's so many people watching us on TV.
Oh, that's right, figure. The difference in the bid, I think the major difference in the bid in some of the things that Mrs. Friedman just mentioned was, like the Bluefish, we're going to bring in an outside company for $5,000 to do cleaning of the building. I think the Angler company is addressing that in their bid and will either bring someone in themselves or they'll probably do the cleaning themselves. They'll probably feel that they'll take it on themselves so that that money can come to the district and not to, a custodial firm. I believe everything that, I think it's an apples to apples bid. What we did is we sent out the existing lease we had with Envious, and we asked people, and Steve Adams, myself, and I think Paul had some input on that when we sent it out to people. He, made some suggestions that we should add. We asked people to take that lease. They're going to manage that lease, and how much would they pay us to have that lease? And so, I think it was apples to apples. Both firms were bidding on management of that lease.
So the $4,100 a month, while they didn't itemize it, includes the water, the chlorine, the cleaning.
Well, I think the water and stuff is separate. I think it comes to about $5,300 a month or something when you add the capital improvements and the water and the stuff in there. Those are mentioned on a separate.
Yeah, I know the water is just that they have to pay a certain amount on top of their rental.
To help offset the cost of the water that, we absorb by them filling the pool at times, and, water that evaporates and through usage ends up outside the pool.
Oh, which is the same as the other one. Which is the same as the other one. They're both saying that. I just. And does Angler have all the appropriate insurance in place?
That's what he's waiting for, to have a contract to take to the insurance company to get his insurance. He needs, he can't just have insurance to have with no customer. So what he was going to do is go, now that we've told him that if we award him, he'll go get insurance, and the finance committee told him that he would have to send those insurances to the business office, evidence that he has all that stuff before the contract would be signed.
We had told them upstairs that everything was subject, effective October 1st, and that it would be subject to providing the necessary insurance documents to the school district before they could take over. And he was, the gentleman from Anglerfish was there tonight. He is a Cumberland resident. They used to manage it for our former tenant, and he's been dealing with the swimming clubs now for close to 15 years, I think it was, he said. So he looks to add more people to the programs here in town. So we felt upstairs, he had, since we're comparing apples to apples, that $1,000 more in rent, base rent to us, was important, considering the former lease, I believe it would be $5,600 a month in the second year. So this is a dramatic reduction in regards to it. And it's a one-year contract only.
I have a question. So when comparing the bids, the other bidder itemized out chlorine and chemicals, and Anglerfish did not. Is he aware that he's on the hook for,
3 years. He's been running the pool for 3 years. He knows he has to buy the chlorine and the rest
he
of
has
it.
to supply? Okay. That we're not going to get a bill for that?
You have a question?
I'd just like to add one thing. While I was impressed with the actual bid proposal that Bluefish put together this time, which was seriously lacking the last time they presented one, one thing that I did like about Angler's discussion upstairs, or wherever we are, is that this is his entire business. In order for him to make his own money and for his business to survive, he is all in that one pool. He doesn't have other locations. This is his full-time job. This is everything for him. And I think that alone will be the incentive to make our pool program run better than it has in the last few years. And if not, we can, we don't have to renew. We'll be able to cancel if there's a problem. We're not going to have the problems we've had in the past. We'll have a much better written contract for 1 year.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we had a motion and a second by Mrs. Friedman for discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. So it's a one-year contract. Mr. Adams, you're aware, got to take care of the deals. Okay, next is discussion and a vote to approve homeschool instruction request for the 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Superintendent?
Mr. Chairman, as you can imagine, there are a significant number of requests this time of year. I would recommend approval.
Superintendent is recommending approval for the 2019-2020 homeschool instruction. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Mr. Fiorello, seconded by Mr. Hess. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Next is discussion and a vote to approve the amended policies. I-6, school-sponsored overnight field trips. Mr. Fiorello.
Yes, as I discussed, this was approved 3-0 the other night. The only real amendments to both of these policies actually was to remove any language that involved cost to students, and also the structure of how fundraising is done. The old policies stated that before fundraising could start, school committee had to approve the trip first. Now, the new policy is stating that when they come to us for approval, they must have already identified the source of the funds that's going to pay for that field trip. So this will bring us in line with state law and the commissioner's ruling, and I would move passage of I-6, school-sponsored overnight field trips.
Mr. Fiorello moves passage of the I-6 school-sponsored overnight field trips. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by
Bernardo?
Mrs. Bernardo. You here? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 7-0. Next is I-10, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips. Mr. Fiorello?
Yeah, the changes really are almost exactly the same. And it's funny, having gone through these policies, when they first came into being, they were very separate and distinct policies. Over the years, we've added so much language to ensure, certain safety stipulations, chaperone stipulations, that these policies are almost identical now, which is one of the reasons why when we do the rewrite, we're gonna combine it into one policy again. But I would move passage of I-10, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips.
Mr. Fiorello moves passage of I-10, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Salvatore. Any discussion? All in favor? Ayes have it 7-0. Next is discussion and/or vote to approve resolution SCR 2019-20, fiscal year 20 amended school budget. Mr. Hess.
Okay, so this is just a little bit of budget housekeeping. After everything is said and done, after we've got everyone hired at the very beginning of the year, sometimes we have to make adjustments to the budget to account for that. So while this will have no impact on the overall net of the budget itself, this does work out to a $57,023 increase that we're going to use our breakage, which is essentially our annual projected savings from salaries and other things that are not spent. So this did pass upstairs on a 3-0 vote, and I would move passage here as well.
Mr. Hess moves passage of SCR 2019-20. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Friedman. Any discussion? This basically just aligns each school with the adopted salaries now. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 7-0.
Mr. Chair, can we circle back to item A, the discussion to approve the school committee's recommendations for the construction bond plans?
I was going to just discuss it under regular business, but we'll go
Can
right
we?
back to A.
Okay.
That's fine.
Sorry, I just wanted to circle back to your comment at the end of the meeting in revising the meeting time for 9:19.
Yep.
So I'd like to make a motion to adjust the meeting time to 8 PM.
Mrs. Waters makes a motion to adjust to the meeting next week until 8:00 PM for start time. Do I have a second?
I have a second for discussion.
That's fine.
Because it's still a little unclear to me what we have to resolve between now and next week. Because I feel like I got two different answers, one from the project manager and one from the architect, in terms of if we are approving this in concept, but yet that means that we can still have some discussion around whether, for example, community should be a 4-track school, or Cumberland Hill should be a however many track
Ashton
school,
should be
whatever,
3-track.
Ashton should be a 3-track, whatever. The project manager said, no, we wouldn't be able to change anything like that. The architect said, yes, we would be able to change something like that. So I'm unclear about what we're supposed to do between now and next week.
I spoke to him after the
All right, so I'll let Mark Fiorello go first, and then I'll speak about it.
I spoke to Derek from Colliers and Louis Torado because I had that same question, because I have some concerns around the plans for Ashton. What they stated is it's somewhere in the middle. I know that's not a great answer, but what they asked us to do is if we want to look at expanding the capacity at Ashton, we should let them know so they can kind of have a plan to add a classroom or two. Once they do that, then we can, if we get into the nitty-gritty after everything gets approved by RIDE, we can make some slight adjustments. But they would like to know by tomorrow, I think, if we want to see more additional classroom space at Ashton, so they could kind of have an overarching plan.
Go ahead.
Tomorrow?
No. just-
Tomorrow is in 2
just
hours.
Our intent. Our intent.
So I guess my question, and sorry for belaboring this, but it's important, is for Mr. Mitchell. Stop distracting them, Steve. And just this discussion around community school and because I thought we had been discussing all along around redistricting and making that school smaller, and now we're keeping it as is, and do we need to have more discussion if we make one school smaller and another school bigger? And I have a question about the cafeteria size, but
I,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think, to answer your question, yes, I think I said it tonight. I think we do have to have a conversation about Ashton School. You know, I'm a little frustrated about that issue because, you know, that has been a topic of discussion many times. So I don't want to be in a position where Ashton cannot accommodate all of the students who live in the Ashton school community. So we're going to get on that first thing tomorrow morning. We'll have that conversation.
I can answer the question about the cafeteria.
What cafeteria is it?
Mr.
Community? Yeah.
Mr. Torado tells us that RIDE requires 15 feet for each person for the cafeteria. So their plan is to design a cafeteria at community with the addition of music room and so forth that will accommodate 2 lunches at community. It'll be a
Mr.
brand
Chairman,
new-
if I may, Mr.
building. Go
Chairman,
ahead.
at our meeting today, we actually brought that up, and RIDE told us that we could ask that particular, because there is a regulation that for some reason requires 2 lunches at the elementary school, which would mean that there would be 2 lunches with 300 kids, and they said that, or 300 students each, and they said that we could ask that the cafeteria allow for 3 lunches.
Okay,
So that happened in the meeting today.
okay, thank you. So that's with the cafeteria that they've presented to us today.
so then when is the first lunch at 10:30? I mean, I guess the,
No, it's 10:30 now. I think if there are 3 lunches, certainly that time would be pushed back. That did not come up in the conversation.
I think 3 lunches is very doable because I think BF Norton has 3 lunches. So,
but with much fewer kids in each lunch.
Right.
yes, however, you know.
So going back to this
What?
discussion,
What? Tell me, what? Yes, you.
to the mic.
Good evening. When you're talking about cafeteria size and schedules at a school like Community, the RIDE regulation is one thing. How it operates within a school as an elementary principal is a whole nother thing. You know, you got to think about, do you want 300 kids in a cafeteria at once? If it's broken down into 3 different lunches, then you're talking about 200 kids in a cafeteria. Do you want 200 kindergartners and first graders in there at a time? So those are the types of things that you really want to talk about. So what works in regulation, aesthetically, functionality-wise, you want to have conversations about that. That's my recommendation, that's all.
So back to the question about next week, about being prepared to vote next week.
Right.
Do we have to have those deeper conversations ahead of next week? Because what if we said, hey, you know, we don't want 200 kids in a lunch at a time?
You know, again, this is just a concept that they've been working on for months. Every Thursday, they've come in with plans. They had 8 plans. There was talk of moving 60 kids at community school. There was talk of moving 100 kids out of community school. You know, first to be addressed was the children that live in the Ashland district and the children that live in the Cumberland Hill district go back to their home districts from community. That's going to be addressed with these additions that are going to happen. We talked about community school as well. I mean, we could vote next week to decide to move 100 children out of the community. But where do we put them? Do we put them in Ashton and build a bigger building there? Some would go to Garvin. Do we tell
Well,
parents
I mean,
that?
it wasn't that long ago that we moved kids to community,
Because,
including my own
right.
kids that went to Cumberland Hill and then got moved to community.
Right.
So,
I mean,
talking about moving kids back to their
the
home
goal,
school.
the goal is to move them back to their home school district. The mayor was in attendance the other day when we talked about building in town, especially in the community district area. Where would those children go? And at that point in time, we felt, that little committee in that room, it'd be best to redo redistricting then if it got out of hand. I mean, you have a blue ribbon school, and you're going to tell parents, whether it be 60 or 100, we're going to take your child out of a
No,
blue ribbon
no.
school right now.
Talking about parity across all our elementary schools.
Right, we
That
are
is what we're
trying
trying to build, is
We are
parity.
trying to build parity. I agree 100%. But right now, communities are blue ribbon school. If we had to move them, the other schools aren't blue ribbon yet. We are working hard as a school
That's not a-
committee. We are working very hard as a school committee to bring rigor into every elementary school, every middle school, and the high school, and bring it all up. And, they're doing it right now. They're doing it in the district. Mr. DeMonter and his team and the superintendent are working hard to do this. We talked about things in curriculum tonight, about coaching and stuff. We're working, but if you want to move 100 kids out of community, then let's move them.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
we have a 5-year plan. We have 5 years to make every school a blue school.
Right.
So I don't agree with leaving the numbers as they are, as they were presented tonight. I think we need to do a better job of actually creating a plan for getting kids back into their home schools. And if Mr. Fiorello, as you indicated, that's what the company needs to know tomorrow, that's what we need to tell them.
Well, I think one of the issues is, I think in a perfect world, if we had unlimited funds, I think Ashton would be a 3-track school. I don't think we would have enough money to do it. That was one of the deciding factors. But that being said, I think we need to look at possibly the additional classroom or two to be really sure that we have fully the ability to do it. And I know Mr. Mitchell is adamant about that.
Yeah. Because of course, we're making decisions that are
We just
going
don't
to
want to
last
paint
us.
ourselves into a corner next week. with
years.
it. Right.
And so,
And I think what'll have to happen, quite honestly, is Cumberland's going to really have to wrap their head around the fact that we may have to redistrict every several years to really balance out all 5 schools. And I know that's like the third rail of conversation in this town, but that's what's going to have to happen.
An addition at Ashton to make it a 3-track school with the necessary classrooms was, I believe, $30 million, Mr. Pignano? How much was that? If we were to do a 3-track school at Ashton and build the necessary classrooms for that, how much did Mr. Torado project it could cost us? How much was it?
I think the plan is now he's putting 9 classrooms there, but they're all preschool.
Right, but there was no second floor on this plan.
Do a second floor was very expensive because of the additional.
Right.
The original plan was 6 at Ashton and 6 at Cumberland Hill.
So certainly, I agree in concept with what we're trying to achieve in terms of active learning classrooms and flexible space and learning commons and all of that stuff. And making sure that our curriculum and our pedagogy is supportive of those kinds of spaces and that we're thinking about professional development spaces. I agree in concept with all of that. I guess what I'm just uncertain about is, again, getting down to the size of the schools and who goes where. But the concept of the vision of the classrooms and the space and how we want to use them, I agree with. So I'm just uncertain about what I need to approve,
Well,
and so.
You asked, what do you have to do between now and next week? I think the question that has to be decided is, do you go back and add classrooms at Ashton and reduce the number of children going to community, or not? I really think.
Mr., come to the mic, please.
I have a comment about that. So, the parent that spoke out about Ashton's enrollment when Mr. Torado put up the kindergarten numbers, there were 3 classrooms, and he explained that he would create the clusters and have the classrooms together with the common area. When that third grade, when those 3 classrooms, the 3 kindergartens, when they roll up, you need the house for the first grade to house that because a new group is coming in. So they wouldn't have a choice for Ashton to be a 3-track. You need that classroom space to roll up each time. So to me, it's not even a conversation. If the enrollment shows that kindergarten has that three classrooms, where does that class go when other kids come in? You need that additional 6 classrooms across the whole entire building, the way that it was presented there. That's all. Go ahead. You want me to stay here?
And that's the point that was being raised tonight.
Yeah,
right?
that parent was absolutely accurate. When you have 3 in a kindergarten and 2 in every other classroom, right? 2 in every other grade level, excuse me. Those 3 kindergartens, they're going to now become 3 first grades. So the 3 first grades, that house, when it's built as 2 with a common area, you need the 3rd classroom, and you need that to continue for the entire building. So she was 100% accurate.
I mean, this is great discussion. I mean, if we add classrooms to Ashton, then overall, Torado and Colliers will have to look to deduct elsewhere. As the mayor says, he wants to get to the end and get it all done. But when you start adding, if you add 3 or 4 more classrooms, 5 more classrooms to Ashton, it drives up the cost.
But don't we need
And-
them?
But it sounds like, I'm sorry, but it sounds like we actually, in order to just take care of, not even reducing community size now, it sounds like we need the extra classrooms just to
Just
take care of
because.
Ashton, and we're still not dealing with the fact that we have a really large elementary school, which does impact potentially scheduling for the elementary schools as a whole. We talked about it, it'd be much easier if they were more balanced, and now it sounds like there's really no room to do that. But it does sound like we do need to fix this Ashton issue for Ashton as it stands right now.
Right. In regards to
So-
to the cost, Mr. Chair,
Mis-
in regards to the cost that you were just mentioning and driving up the cost, that's why we have to decide that now, so that we can have a accurate cost plan.
Mr. Superintendent, could you let Torado know to come up with a plan for Ashton that includes an additional 6 classrooms in addition to what he's already proposed tonight?
Yes, will do.
So that
5.
5 classrooms, so that the committee can look at that and then look at what deductions we could do, if any, for community in regards to, lowering the amount of work that would need to be done there. I know at community, they've talked about the current cafeteria would be gutted and windows would go in, so they'd bring some natural light in and turn into a media and art center and so forth. It would get sprinkled per the fire marshal's code, and giving them a brand-new cafeteria would accomplish what they're trying to do there, besides moving the offices and things like that and creating the learning centers and so forth. We can have Mr. Torado come in next Thursday, present those to the school committee, and then vote on a conceptual idea of how we want the district to go. And then, we'll vote next week in regards to it. Torado, I may even have a conceptual drawing in the back of my truck. I've got so many drawings from the guy in regards to adding rooms and so forth. But if this is the way that the school committee feels is best, then, we'll have Torado draw it up so that we can vote on it and look at it next week. Next week, our only item on the agenda is this.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Let's go with Mr. Salvatore, and then we'll go with Mrs. Waters. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I agree. This is a major point of concern that does need to be looked at and addressed.
Okay, Mrs. Waters?
I would also, in addition to the drawings, would like to see an updated to the project numbers for the enrollment of the schools. An update to this.
Well, didn't you get a sheet, a separate sheet
No,
tonight?
I'm saying when he makes those changes.
Then these.
Oh, okay,
I
the-
want to see this
You
change.
follow, Mr. Superintendent, what we're talking about? Okay.
Moving any community kids to Cumberland Hill?
Excuse me?
Are we talking about also moving any community kids to Cumberland Hill as part of the go back to your school
Oh, yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
So that would be part of,
Yeah, community, I mean, Cumberland Hill is either 4 or 6 room addition. I can't remember exactly.
but we haven't been talking about reducing the population of community. If some of those kids from community were going to go to Cumberland Hill for those additional classrooms, then that means the community population gets,
But it wasn't that many. I had asked the assistant superintendent for a breakdown in regards to how many children from the Ashton and Cumberland Hill districts were going to community. And there was maybe 18, children. That was it. I thought it
Oh,
was,
is that all of Countryside?
I thought it would be more, and it's like 18 children for this year.
That can't be right.
It's coming from the assistant superintendent's office.
From Countryside, like that whole Countryside area? That goes to, yeah.
Yeah, my assistant Lori Jenks handles all that, and what I think the numbers that she gave the chair were students who she's had to displace because of closed classrooms that belong at one place and have had to displace in another area. Those were the numbers.
not necessarily.
Correct, correct.
Bring back the kids that got
The home,
moved
yeah.
That's right.
Right,
5 years ago.
right. So we would want to see that about the kids going to their home school.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We can convey that message to Mr. Torado tomorrow and have him come back next Thursday. He's going to need some time. And, what?
Mr. D'Amato will be part of that conversation to figure out how many kids are actually going back
Yeah.
from one school to another.
They would, yes.
Because, as Mr. Mitchell said, the absolute goal would be for every kid to go back to their neighborhood school.
Right.
So, I think that's the most important thing, and we don't want to
And-
run out of money.
No, we need to leave wiggle room for
Absolutely, we need,
construction.
and quite honestly, with whatever plan we do next week, I think it needs to be done in a way that leaves us some wiggle room to make some adjustments down the road as we start finalizing this, which was my concern when Derek from Colliers said that, essentially, once you vote on a plan, it's done. That's going to be the plan.
Mr. Chair,
As long as, the big picture of the plan will not be able to change.
Mrs. Waters?
in addition to the items that we already discussed that we would like to see next week, could we also get some bullets as some swag numbers? I understand they can't be concrete
Some
numbers.
what?
but Swag, like a wild guess,
As far as building is concerned?
as far as,
How
yeah.
much it would cost per
Yeah.
building?
Yeah,
Mr. Torado, as best he can do is give you, based on what he did last year for Pawtucket, part of this process of RIDE is that a outside company gets hired to put a number on all the cost. Then it comes back to Torado, comes back to Collier, because Collier is the town's agent to make sure nothing got missed, make sure the numbers are accurate, and so forth. He'll be able to give you a rough number.
I think a rough number
but-
would be fine, yeah.
But, that's where, what it will be is a rough
We
number.
need to know if it's feasible or not, if we're asking them to do something that's completely unfeasible.
It's shifting rooms, as Mr. Torado said. You take it from here, you put it here, you put it from here, you put it from there. But we're gonna now make Ashton a 3-track school. That makes a big difference as well, in regards to the cost. Superintendent, Mr. Fiorello, Mr. Prignano, we've heard all kinds of numbers in the last, yeah, my head is spinning over this. Right, so, right. so-
Agree. Sure.
All right, so
Sure.
Mr. Prignano says about 50 million in work for the elementaries, but we'll bring him in next week. This is the only thing on our agenda.
Yep.
We want to get it right. The mayor wants us to get it right.
Yep.
You know, and we got to get it right for the taxpayers. So, you know, it's our call, it's our direction that we give the building committee, and they'll run with it and do what they got to do, and we'll deal with the other stuff of which schools move first or second or third. Okay? And your motion was to change it to 8 o'clock.
Yep, that's what time we started tonight.
Can I
talking about.
offer a compromise at like 7:30?
Well, so the issue is not necessarily the 5 people on the school committee that have children at the high school. It's the fact that we've invited the town and the parents to come, and with probably over 500 parents going to the Meet the Teacher night at the high school, I feel it's important that we allow them to come and attend.
If they come.
If they come,
That's the-
but
I mean-
I think it's on us to have good faith
And
that,
I booked this room tonight expecting it to be a full house, and
well, there's a good amount of people. We had a good amount of people.
most of them are teachers, right? So, that's fine. We have a motion and we have a second for the meeting next week to be held at 8 o'clock and not 7 o'clock.
That's
Any other
essentially what
discussion?
time we started talking about it tonight, was 8 o'clock.
No, after,
The time we started the meeting.
I'd say about 9:15 we started. No, I'm sorry. You're right. Regular meeting came back about 9.
Yes,
So
right.
we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? I'm opposed. It's 6-1, so we need to get the word out. Mr. Mitchell, if you could do a broadcast to the parents again, tell them that the meeting has been changed to 8 o'clock PM. I really would like to have it here, but I don't know if we can accomplish that, so we will go back to the Trans building in the cafeteria for 8 o'clock next Thursday on the 19th.
Is there a conflict having it? Does it blow?
Well, I'm just thinking of all these people that are gonna be in the school, how you gonna get cars parked over here and, you know. In the Trans building. Any other comments? No school committee comments?
I do,
None?
I do.
Mr. Fiorello has one.
I just wanted to point out that Councilman Kinch has been spreading around some money from his town stipend to some of our schools to help them out with small projects, and that's greatly appreciated. Just last night, he gave $200 to McCourt Middle School, which I know they were very appreciative of. I'd also like to thank Rep. Ackerman, who's been dropping checks off at schools for the past couple of weeks. I believe she hit just about every school where any of her constituents have children. So that's also greatly appreciated.
That's it. All right, so I just want to point out, last Friday, the superintendent, myself, Mr. Fiorello, met with Durham Bus about the busing issues we have in town. I'd like to say that Durham's meeting was at 10:30 and they came late. You know, we expressed our utter disgust with them about how they've treated the school children in Cumberland. And they're still working on issues with Durham Bus. And I had asked for the name of someone from corporate offices to reach out to them because what they're doing is just wrong. They're not prepared. When they came in here and the guy said, "I want you to be a ghost," and he said, "Yep," they were nowhere even close. And I'm very disgusted, with Durham right now. They're the wrong bus provider for this town. So we did meet the superintendent, Marion Verone. All of them are getting phone calls and dealing with every day. And, as the superintendent said, I cannot just not call the parent back. So he's been making many phone calls in regards to this issue. And today I saw him on Facebook again, postings about being late. So just want you all to know that we're on it, and we'll continue to be on it, looks like, for a while. Anyone else have any comments? Mr. Hess?
So I just wanted to say, I think some valid points and concerns have been brought up with regard to the capital improvements that are being proposed, but I think we also need to be cognizant of the fact that when you spread $83 million out amongst 8 buildings and construction costs that are going to be taking place over the next 5 years, it's really not a lot of money. Barrington's new middle school was $68 million. Potter Burns was $13.8 million. So I think we need to ask the right questions, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that we may be presented with the choice between doing a school the way we want to do it and then not doing something else, or essentially spreading the wealth. I think we all need to ask the question, if doing Ashton as a 3-track school means we don't do something else, are we ready to do that? Because I honestly think, looking at the numbers that I've seen, and I think that's where we're at. I think we can't have everything that we want. There isn't enough money. I don't picture there being enough money. So I just think we want to balance. There are some very valid questions that we need to ask, but if the most cost-effective way to have an early childhood education center is to have more kids housed at one school that are then moved to another one, but that means they have a better early childhood experience, but then they are moved to other schools that have been renovated and all have the same types of learning environments, is that okay? Because, as I've said, if I could wave a magic wand, the town would have 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. If I could wave a magic wand, that to me would be the right way to do it. There'd be efficiencies. It would cost probably hundreds of millions of dollars that we don't have, and land that we don't have. We have 8 buildings. We have to work within the confines of the size of those buildings, the land that we have. 8 locations. So I just think we need to be careful about, or at least be thinking about, if we're going to have to make a choice. Are we going to do X versus Y? Or are we going to try and make things better for everybody? Because I honestly think it will come down to that of, boy, we would really like to be able to do this to Ashton or that to community, but there just isn't the money. So if we did that, then we can't do these other things. And I think Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Prignano and Mr. Damana and Colliers and Torado have put a great deal of thought into this. They've looked at a number of different options, and I think we need to pay homage to that, while also meeting our fiduciary responsibilities and community responsibilities to those that elected us. But again, $83 million over buildings that are as old as ours are will go very, very quickly. And I think when I look at what they're proposing to do with these buildings, I look at what Cumberland has accomplished, and I think it is despite the facilities that we have. And I think of what could be accomplished if we had facilities that even approached the abilities of our faculty and our staff and our students, intellectually, pedagogically. We're not there, but look at what we're able to achieve with buildings that were last renovated in the Reagan administration. So I don't want to lose sight of what the overall project goal is, at least in my mind, when I voted in favor of it, is transformational change to the elementary schools especially, but feeding that up into the middle schools and the high school, so that these kids aren't in buildings that just the facilities themselves are a drag on their education. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Any other discussions? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn by Mr. Fiorello,
Second?
second by everyone on the committee. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Hess is opposed. We'll see you next week at 8 o'clock.